Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work at NBC Sharks, Twitter, Sheng_Peng, and Blue Sky, Sheng Peng.
And I'm Keegan McDowell. You can find me on Twitter at @half_hockey, my website, half-hockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. That was even faster this time. Gonna get even faster. We have exit interviews from Mike Grier, a bunch of the players. Specifically, we're going to focus on Mike Grier's because it's the most interesting. But before all that, Sheng's got a word from our sponsors.
Actually, I did want to mention that I learned from one of our listeners, John Mendelson, shout out to John, that some people listen to our podcast at a faster speed, which I never really thought about. So I wonder how I sound out at 1.25 faster, 1.5, 2 times faster. So
I always think that's funny. We get a lot of comments about the length of our podcast.
Yeah.
So it's like, you could go speed it up. You could break it into parts. There's always like timestamps as well. So if you need to like click on whatever topic.
I never thought about listening. I've never listened to a podcast faster because that just seemed odd.
I used to do it in med school for lectures.
How much does it change the voice though of the whatever?
It depends on the person. High-pitched voices end up being really high-pitched, but normal people just sound a little bit more high-pitched than general.
Okay. So like maybe like 1.25 faster isn't too much of a difference. Like
right now we're rambling and they've already gone through it because they're at 2x speed.
Okay. Well, anyway, that just was it just never occurred to me to do that because I'm kind of a Luddite with things. I kind of learn new things slowly. Not that that's a new thing, but to me it's a new thing. But anyway, let's talk about our sponsor, Bring Hockey Back. BringHockeyBack.net. They do the best t-shirts. They do custom hockey jerseys for teams of any size for any kind of event. If you know Bring Hockey Back, incredible t-shirts, right? They do great Sharks t-shirts. Right now, they've got a couple of cool Sharks t-shirts on their website, BringHockeyBack.net. They have an awesome Macklin Celebrini t-shirt, Macklin Celebrini on an ATV. They have Director of Vibes, Joe Thornton. Director of Vibes is a very popular t-shirt for them, I think, last year. Director of Vibes. You can get both of those t-shirts for 15% off. Coupon code San Jose Hockey Now. Coupon code San Jose Hockey Now, 15% off at BringHockeyBack.net. But number 1, 2, jerseys. So if you ever are looking for custom jerseys for your hockey team or just for like some kind of party or something like that, they are the people for that. So Bring Hockey Back, BringHockeyBack.net.
Getting better and better at that.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I appreciate that.
Well, it sounds more clean. Thank you to Bring Hockey Back. It's been a great time as our title sponsor. Okay, let's start with Mike Grier's exit interview. Sheng, you put out an article on NBC, kind of breaking down some of the topics. So we're gonna go through them, and I think a lot of what is said in these exit interviews is kind of the same. Like you hear the same things throughout the year, and they just repeat it again. They're like, "Yeah, we worked hard. Maybe we got a little bit better. Maybe we had some improvement from players." But I think there is a couple like. When you ask Mike Grier a specific question, like you said off the air, he answers you. So the most interesting one was this: could San Jose trade away the first overall pick? I was like, that was a great question. I don't see it happening, but I think it's an interesting idea if we do win another draft lottery.
Well, I think the way he answered it was the most interesting. Wasn't my question, I'll say, but it was a good question, though. And what he said was that he gave away, number one, that he got really good offers last year for the pick that became Macklin Celebrini.
Yeah.
He referenced, and Mike does like to do this, Mike loves other sports. He referenced the Herschel Walker, Ricky Williams trades. Those are NFL trades. Of course, Mike's brother, Chris, is the GM of the Miami Dolphins. That's really not talked a lot about. I know Mike doesn't like to talk about it that much, but that really isn't talked enough about. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's not a very frequent thing. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, not at all. No, I mean, frequent. I don't think it's ever. I don't know if it's ever happened. But
sports have been around for a while. There's probably somebody who did like basketball and baseball and that kind of thing.
But anyway, though, if you guys aren't familiar with the NFL so much. I'm a big fan of all sports, or all team sports, American, whatever, the things I grew up
Mhm.
with in the
Sure,
good old
sure.
USA when I was a kid. That's right. I'm not a big soccer fan. So
Fair.
anyway, so Herschel Walker was a superstar running back for the Dallas Cowboys in 1988. And he got traded to. It's a very complicated trade. If you go to
Mm.
Wikipedia, like unless you're an NFL fan, you won't understand what's going on in this trade. But essentially, though, he got traded for 8 draft picks, highlighted by 3 first-round picks. I think basically the Cowboys got 3 straight Minnesota Vikings first-round picks for
Wow.
Herschel Walker. Ricky Williams was
Ricky.
1999, I think, and the New Orleans Saints traded their entire draft
Yeah.
for for the number 5 pick with the then Washington Redskins. So the number 5 pick to draft Ricky Williams, also a running back. And the picks in that one were the number 12 pick in 1990, that year, 1999, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, and also two picks the next year. The Saints first rounder in 2000, and also their 3rd rounder in 2000. Also 8 picks.
That one I actually think is not crazy, like value wise, right? Because you're going from 12 to 5, or you're going from 5 to 12, and you're adding a first and then a bunch of like meh picks, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. You know, like it's a lot, but it's not like, I think it could happen in the NHL. Is what I mean.
I think that's pretty crazy. Look at the draft. I mean, not the draft value parts. The draft pick value charts are like the be all end all. But think about looking at moving 12 to 5 and adding all that to it.
Honestly, like because once you in certain drafts, like in the NHL, when you reach out of that top 10 mark, and especially into the top 5, if there is somebody like Ricky Williams was a great running back for a long time, at a certain point, yeah, like 12 plus another first, and then a shit ton of other picks. Like it might be closer than you think. I think.
I think I've got to look at the draft
Yeah.
value pick chart to be sure, but I think that it's the first that makes it crazy. Like if you trade your entire draft and then you add the 3rd rounder next year, you don't add the 1st rounder. It sounds crazy, but you traded 7 picks for 1. But like you mentioned, it's the first, and it's a bunch of other like not so great picks, right?
Yeah.
So granted, I think in the NFL, the mid round picks have more value.
Yeah, they do for
NFL,
sure.
just players just are more likely to become players in the mid round than they are in the NHL.
Yeah, and there's also 55 players on a team rather than like 20. So
right, but nonetheless, though, like I think it's the 1st round thing that really just like. But then you add another 1st rounder on top of it that is, I guess it was unprotected or whatever. I don't know what kind of protections they could have had in a trade back then, but that 2000 Saints pick, right, the one for next year, which obviously you don't know at the time where it's going to land, ended up being the number 2 pick, I think.
Oh, was it? Oh shit! They got.
Well, you don't know that, but that's the risk, right? I mean,
Exactly.
Could have been the 22nd pick for all you know, but it ended up being the number 2 pick, I believe. So anyway, though, and I was looking back at hockey examples, and of course, like there aren't a lot of examples of hockey of trading the number 1 pick or whatever, but the closest one actually is, and this is not to say Macklin is anything like this. So I want to be sure, like, not all you guys grew up with this, but when I was growing up, Eric Lindros was like the most hyped prospect. He is still in my lifetime the most hyped prospect I think that I've lived through the time of. Sidney Crosby and McDavid were close. They might be they were on par with Lindros, maybe just a hair short, but man, like if you guys grew up with it or you guys read about it, like Lindros was basically described as like basically like Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, but he's mean.
He's big and he can hit.
Yeah. So he was everything, and so I don't. Yeah, so Macklin's not even close because Macklin was, and we might end up being wrong about this because Macklin might be better than Connor Bedard, but the Macklin hype was definitely short of Bedard. And Bedard was probably a step below McDavid. which was probably a step below Lindros. So that gives you kind of a degrees kind of idea, right, of where the hype was with Macklin and again Bedard and McDavid to Lindros. But if you
Yeah.
listen to this package, though, that if you guys forgot about this package,
Whew.
the Flyers sent the number 6 pick that year, which ended up being Peter Forsberg, who ended up being better than Lindros. But
Yeah.
but if you don't even think about that part of it, the hindsight part of it, just that they traded the number 6 pick that year is still pretty significant. Mike Ricci, who was just coming off his rookie year for the Flyers. And Mike Ricci, I don't think was necessarily going to be a superstar, but we saw what Mike Ricci became, just a
Great player.
Yeah, just a great all-around player, super reliable, a playoff winner type, right? Even though I don't think, oh no, Mike did win a Stanley Cup with the Avs, I think, but like, yeah, like he was a guy you wanted when when the chips were down. So the super valuable player. He's what you hope any kind of that's what you hope your third line center is if you're the Sharks of the future, whether that's Ostapchuk or Beasted or you sign somebody or something. That's like the dream third line center, basically. So Mike Ricci,
Yep.
Ron Hextall, Steve Duchesne, who are still both very good players, right? Ron Hextall was excellent starting goalie throughout his career. At this point, he wasn't at his best, but he still was a very good goalie. Steve Duchesne was a top power play guy. Kerry Huffman, I don't know his game so well, but he might have been more of a bottom pairing defenseman. But these are all playable guys. And like I said, Hextall and Duchesne were legitimate star-like players, not superstars, but like legit players in a lineup. $15 million cash and 2 first-round picks to the Quebec Nordiques for Lindros.
A guy who could not stay healthy.
Well, you didn't know at the time, but like I said, this guy's hype Lindros, right? Like I think you're too young for it, but
I heard about it.
Yeah, it was. I think it was beyond even Crosby and McDavid at the time. So,
and I mean, obviously, I was a very young child in the '90s, so it was not my. I didn't follow hockey then, but I remember everybody talking about how hyped Lindros was and that he just couldn't stay healthy. And yeah, looking back at that trade, you're like, I know Peter Forsberg, and also, everybody else came with him. Like, I think the interesting thing about this draft, and Mike even kind of alluded to it, is you have Schaefer as the D, and then a bunch of forwards that are kind of going to be in the top 5, probably. Kind of reminds me of the like Owen Power-ish year, maybe, because he went number 1. Then there was like Ken Johnson. Is that the same draft? I think it's the same draft.
Yeah,
Eklund, Beniers. There's like a bunch of forwards after, and everybody's like, oh yeah, Owen Power is going to go. That was probably also the Luke Hughes year, right? So yeah, maybe not the best example.
Now,
but anyway, I think he's way more open to trading this pick, obviously, because this isn't the Macklin Celebrini year. And the draft isn't as theoretically as strong as something like getting Macklin or even
not quite the
Will
same here. Sorry to interrupt, but like Hughes went number 4 in that draft. Edmondson went number 6.
That's right.
Brand Clark number 8. So
yeah, so there's 3D in the top 10 there. Yeah. Which this draft, I think maybe there'll be 3. I think it really depends. Like there's a lot of love for guys like Radim Murka, Jackson Smith, Keishan Agenson. So it's possible that
back half of 10 maybe, or back half of the top 10. Okay,
I think the top 5, 6 is going to be Schaefer plus forwards, and then we start to get some D trickle in. Teams love their defensemen, and once you get past the really really good forwards, they're going to pick somebody.
I wonder if Mike is tipping his hand a little bit or not, or maybe he's bluffing a little bit, because that quote that I picked out. At the top, after Schaefer, it's probably more forward heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's granted, that fits with every kind of draft prospect consensus, right? I have not seen anybody put up Jackson Smith like, yeah, he's my number 4 pick, or he's my number 3 pick. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it seemed almost like he was kind of admitting that Schaefer's their number 1, but it could have also been the way that he mentioned it, that like, oh yeah, I mean, besides Schaefer, it's all forwards, not like after Schaefer. But the way he said it was after, which is going to make us speculate, right?
Schaefer's going to play in the U18s, though, right? Coming up, right? Is he supposed to?
That's a good question. Because like it's been just this month-long, like, oh yeah, he's going to be next month. It's going to be next month. And then still waiting on return. So
Oh,
I'm
he
not
hasn't
sure.
played yet?
No,
Oh, I thought
I'm
he
pretty
came
sure he
back.
was,
Okay. I know he
I'm pretty sure
practiced
he
and
was,
stuff.
yeah, he's been practicing for like 2 months,
Hmm.
or like a month. And then I don't know if he actually got into a game with Erie in the playoffs or not.
Okay, I'm trying to look at okay, actually yeah, they've just named the staff, 18 players named to the pre-tournament camp roster. I would think Schaefer's on the 18, the pre-tournament team. Let me make sure. Oh,
Yeah.
I saw his name here. He is?
No, I'm not sure, but Schaefer has not played yet, so he hasn't
Oh,
played
okay.
at all. He didn't play in the playoffs. He hasn't played since the last game of the U20s, and that was over 4 months ago, or almost 4 months ago. So
Oh, okay. Oh,
kind of strange.
actually, I don't see Schaefer on the under 18 pre-tournament team either.
Yeah, him and his agent might be like, don't risk it.
Yeah, and
You know?
Misa, it says here Misa was invited but not able to attend. So
Yeah, I think he was also playing hurt, so he was kind of banged up.
mm.
I think a lot of these guys they might. I mean, Schaefer's he was already doing well at the U20s, so he doesn't. Sometimes guys don't step back into the U18s.
Okay.
So
The reason why I wonder is because I was talking to some people about another prospect, Frondell.
yep,
He's a guy that I think is going to play U18s, and he's a guy that
an
people
animal.
think could really like change his status with the strong U18s, and or he already has a very high status, but that he can really get up there among the forwards. That we know Misa, we've heard Hagens, but that Frondell can get in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's already worked himself into the top
Yeah.
5. It's just whether or not he can kind of overtake guys like Hagens and Martone with the U18s. That'll be fun because he's been playing pro hockey this whole year, and he's going to go and play against a bunch of children. So I'm excited to see him. But
Okay.
I've watched him. He's very good. It's a lot of likable tools. He's got a great shot. I like Frondell a lot.
Well, yeah,
But
I ask
they're
about the Hurricane too because like that obviously is like the last sort of measuring stick before the draft. So,
I think
um,
to be honest, I think
yeah.
maybe there's something going on with the recovery about the collarbone,
Mm,
and because it's been 4 months, and like there was speculation it would be
2
three
months.
months,
Yeah,
3
2 3
months,
months, right? Yeah. Hmm.
and then it didn't happen. Then it was like, oh well, he'll come back for the playoffs, and then it didn't happen, and then so now he's not going to play for the U18s. It looks like. So I don't know.
Interesting.
Either
Okay.
maybe they're just being cautious with it. Like they're like, oh, we've sewn up a top 2 overall pick. Why risk trying to, get out of that with another injury?
Yeah, yeah. I
So
have to look harder at this because now, yeah, possible Sharks #1 pick here. But anyway, though, was wondering though what you think, like, in terms of it was curious that
hmm,
I do think that Mike was being honest about this because he has nothing to lose by being honest about this. Like he revealing too much of his draft plans, like he has to be careful about that, his 2025 draft plans. But for him to say that he had good offers for Macklin last
yeah,
year,
yeah.
he has nothing to lose by saying that. In fact, actually, just makes Macklin look better. But would you trade? Let's throw something like I said
Almost everything
myself.
you're gonna say is no, but continue.
Okay, like I like if someone offered even half of what the Flyers offered for Eric
Mm,
Lindros, like that's a pretty good offer. Let's say okay, so equivalent.
sure.
Let's say I read someone speculated like, oh, I bet the Carolina Hurricanes were in on or something like that. And I mean, they're a kind of team that is very aggressive like that. So I'm just being wildly speculative here. But let's say if you're a Hurricanes, Hurricanes don't have a top pick. Or
Sure.
they don't have like a #6 pick they could throw at the Sharks. But let's say they offered Nikishin,
Hmm.
a defenseman that just came over that they're really high on. Let's say that's the Forsberg equivalent.
Mm,
Um, they offered a young up and coming star, Mike Ricci type. Jarvis might be a little too high end there. Drury, who they did have, is probably a little too low end there.
yeah.
Um,
Could have
Well,
been Natchez if they were looking to trade Natchez, I guess.
yeah, they're looking to trade. Yeah, that's true. Even though he's old. Okay, let's just say we're just speculating here. So
Sure.
let's say they offered Nikishin, Natchez, and 2 first-round picks. Let's take out the Hextall, Duchesne, Huffman, $15 million in cash,
Yeah.
which definitely an old school thing. That's
Yeah,
not a
sorry,
thing
get
that
some
happens
cash.
anymore.
I think
But would you think
I,
about that for the pick that becomes Celebrini? Yeah, Nikishin, what is he projected as a top 4, maybe top pairing guy?
yeah.
Netches, we know older, but we know who he is, and 2 first-round picks, which are on the later side for Carolina. You think you never know, but let's say
I, I
two unprotected first-rounders.
I think no. Still no. I think you're still missing that. If there was a center involved and like a number 1 center type, like that was there, that maybe. But like you're still missing the team, the way that it's constructed, you'd still be missing that sorely, even with a guy like Natchez. And Nikisha would help, obviously, but the hardest thing to get is what we got in Celebrini. So
I mean, it's got to be a number 1 center or number 1 defenseman, right? And
yeah,
Nikishin, I don't know. I know he's supposed to be very good, but I don't know if he's projected as a bona
we'll have to
fide number
see.
1. We have to
He's
see,
been
right?
he's been the guy in the KHL for so long that
So it's possible.
possible for sure. He could step
Okay.
right in. He's a great prospect. He's the best he's the best defensive prospect outside of the NHL for sure, by far.
Okay. Let's see. So who's the number 1 center out there then? If you threw that in there,
A young enough number 1 center that teams would want to trade it is interesting.
yeah.
Maybe
I mean, if fans were honest, if Chicago offered Bedard and I don't know something, or Bedard to the Sharks for the number 1 pick after the draft lottery for like the 2024 number 1 pick and like I don't know a second round pick,
yeah,
I bet San Jose fans would have thought about that.
probably. But it'd be more realistic that Chicago would offer something like Nazar plus the 3rd overall pick plus a bunch of other shit, right?
Right. But then that wouldn't move the needle, right? So
Probably not. But yeah, I really wish he said that there's offers out there. One day I want to know. I just want to know how crazy
yeah. Now I
GMs
want to
get,
read Mike's book.
Yeah, right. I want to know how crazy GMs get because they never really break this kind of wall of silence of the fun part, Oh, I'm going to give you my entire draft class for, this guy. Like I want that. I want to know that.
Here's one more speculative thing for fun then. Would you have taken the entire would you have taken the entire Chicago Blackhawks draft from last year for the number 1 pick?
Oh,
That's number 2. That's obviously what becomes Levshunov. I want to see their other picks too. And I'm not gonna factor in any kind of trades or whatever. I'm just gonna read off the picks that Chicago had last year. So last year that would be actually that was 3 first, so that's kind of ridiculous. But we're just having fun with this. So let's say the Blackhawks offer 2 18-27. That's 3 first rounders. They used on Leshunov, Boivert, if I'm saying his name right, and Vanaker. And then they don't have a second rounder. So they have 3 third rounders. So it's pretty good. 67, 72, 92 that they used on John Mustard, all-time name, Anthony Spilassi, and Jack Pridham. Sorry if I messed up their names. And a fifth and a 6th round pick. So that's 3 first,
and you
3
get to
thirds, and a 5th and a 6th.
And you get to keep your own pick that became Sam Dickinson or Zeke Bouillon if you're a Bouillon truther.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, hell yeah. You could have maybe used the Chicago picks to trade even higher into the defense if you really wanted Perek or something like that. But
I think last year, if you take Demidov with 2, you take Demidov with 2, and then you still have your number 11 pick, and then 18-27. I mean, it's still pretty close, but because I think Demidov is on a level of and I thought that before the draft too, that he was very close in terms of offensive ceiling to Celebrini, that maybe, even though Demidov's not going to be a center and it's still going to be missing out on the most important part, and you're going to be trying to build the team around Will Smith and Ivan Demidov, which sounds fun, but also unrealistic. So I don't know. It's closer, I think. But no.
That's okay.
I'm going to say no.
So no, you say no to 3 first, including the number 2 pick, 3 thirds, I would.
Last
I mean,
year's
you have to think about stuff like this. I mean,
yeah
I like
might do
Celebrini
it.
a lot. I love Celebrini a lot. I mean, we were hearing the hype from Craig Button, from Chris
I know.
Peters, and I
I
bought
think it's
into
hard
it.
because the hindsight bit at the time, I think I
Yeah,
would have
at
done
the
it.
time,
I
you
think
would
I
have
would
done
have
it.
done it.
Okay, okay, yeah, that's what I'm
Now,
asking. Yeah,
now, like knowing what Celebrini is becoming even out of the gate, and no,
no,
but
no, yeah,
then,
like
yeah,
I will say that I would not trade Celebrini for
yeah,
Levshunov, Boyver, Vanek, all these names I've just rattled
absolutely
off.
not.
I would not.
Yeah,
So,
but I also would have taken Demidov it
you
too.
want to
So,
take a Demidov, right? Yeah. So,
but
um,
and that
I
would
want to look
be
at one
a
more just for
ridiculous
fun.
amount of draft capital there. So you could even
Yeah.
trade out to the next year. You can
Hmm.
trade for other guys with 5. Well, you'd have 5 first round picks. Is that right? No, 4. You'd still have 4, but with number 2
Yeah.
overall.
Right. 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 No, you have. Wait, let me think. Oh, yeah, I think it's 5 still. Yeah, it's a net of okay, or 4. 4.
Yeah, it's a net of 4 first round
Yeah.
picks.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you've added 2, right? You switched 1 and 2, and you've added 2. So yeah, that's
yeah.
4. So, but yeah, because if we're matching the Ricky Williams trade, there was the first rounder the next year. So if you don't have that, then you just take the. Okay, how about this for one more offer? Okay, I'm gonna stick with the Chicago thing. Let's
Okay.
say Chicago says, "Hey, we want to keep one of our first rounders here, so we will offer you 2 of our 3 first rounders.
Mhm.
Obviously, the number 2 has to come in the deal, and then 18 or 27, and then we'll
Sure.
give you an unprotected first rounder next year."
Yeah.
So you don't know what that's going to be. That could be the number 1 pick, which Matthew Schaefer. You're looking ahead at the 2025 draft, but it could be very high, or it could be, of course, you never know. Blackhawks go to the playoffs, whatever. That could change things, but yeah,
Unprotected.
yeah, unprotected, yeah. At the
Man,
time,
at the time,
yeah,
that's not bad.
yeah.
I still like it's probably better than the other offer. I mean, right? You're getting
It is, yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
So I probably have to say yes if
Yeah,
it's better than the other offer, right?
yeah, because it's the potential of 2 like
Yep. Top 5 picks.
2 top 5, 2 like a number 2, and next year could be a number 1 pick or
Plus your
whatever.
own bad pick for next year as
Right,
well.
right,
Or
right,
this
right.
year. So that's yeah, add a sweetener, like added another prospect or something, then maybe, yeah. And take
Okay,
Demidov. Don't take I mean Levshinov's fine. He's gonna be a good defenseman.
but take
Um,
Demidov.
but take Demidov instead. And just ignore the Russian thing. He's already here. He's gonna have some struggles, but the kid has got ridiculous skill, and he did that last year too. So
Yeah, that is a crazy thing. I do look forward to the retrospective articles that we're gonna get about Michkov, about Demidov, the teams
yep.
overrate the sort of the Russian factor part of it.
Well,
So
the big
yeah. So
mystery is, and yeah, Dmitry Simashev is gonna probably be a defenseman in the NHL one day, but like, and I know maybe he didn't want to go to the Coyotes, but still, like number 6 overall, you're taking Simashev, who can't even like score a goal in the KHL right now as a defenseman. It's a lot of tools, but almost no offense. And Michkov goes next and is already like a 60-point player in the NHL. So
yeah, though
it's
people
tough.
I trust, and I know it's still like, anti-Russian bias or whatever, but like
It's a lot of question
um
marks.
just I still hear questions about Michkov's overall coachability. I'm not talking about the Tortorella stuff. I don't know anything about that, like what happened this past year, but just the perception of that, which Demidov doesn't have,
Sure, he
that
does not. Yeah.
still persists with Michkov, fairly or unfairly, but it's something that people I trust still kind of tell me
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah,
even
but
when
the
we
kid,
talk about Smith
he's like,
versus Michkov,
yeah.
and this is not from like pro Smith people. I'll say that too. I'll make that
Mm-hmm.
clear. So this isn't from people that like are just trying to push the Smith agenda. That let's just say that I don't know much about enough about Michkov, but that I'm not resolved on that. I guess like people I trust aren't
Yeah.
aren't sure. Like you're right about Utah, Phoenix, because Simashev, I don't know, but if we talk about the San Jose decision, though,
No, I'm not. No, I think San Jose
I know
made the
you're
right
not,
decision.
but we
I
didn't
think
think so though. Like I would have just based on talent picked
Mitchell.
picked Michkov,
Me too.
but I'm still hearing that kind of stuff with him a little bit, and I don't know how much of it is sort of today, Michkov today in Philadelphia, as opposed to like still discussing how he was a couple of years ago. But
Sure.
it's something that makes me okay. That is the reason why maybe he was passed on. So we talk about why maybe Phoenix passed on it, or not Phoenix. I have two teams
Arizona,
to go there.
Utah,
Arizona. Why Arizona passed on him,
and
and why
Montreal.
Montreal passed on him.
Yeah.
And it's clearly Montreal doesn't have a Russian worry too, in the sense of they drafted Demidov next year. Right?
Well, I think their fan base was gonna burn down their arena if they didn't draft it.
Well, if you're the GM of Montreal and you've got to be stronger than that.
I know.
So like if you're Montreal and your guy was who went number 6 in last year's draft, like let's say if Tej is your guy, then that's your guy. You can't listen to the fan base, but but anyway, so that shows at least that it's not like a blanket anti-Russian or Russian factor thing or whatever. Though I know Michkov's case is a little more different than Demidov's. Michkov when he was a draft prospect, the talk was it'd be 3, 4, who knows, years, right? For Michkov, right? 3 years at least, right? Whereas Demidov, it wasn't as sort of much of a topic, right? Much of a worry, I think. Yeah. But anyway, so
it is
I don't want to dig too deep into that part of it. But
and I think there is Michkov is going to be probably a point per game player throughout his career. I think that's kind of like the way that he's going to go. Demidov has some serious skill though, and you're right. There's not the question marks that come with Michkov that are pretty frequent, either about his defensive play or his coachability. So, yeah, at a certain point though, you got to acquire talent. You have to get the players with the talent, even if they don't fit into the system or there's question marks. The talent's there. That's kind of and I think that's also a big difference between 2023 draft and 2024. Talking about would you trade these for this many picks? Is 2023 was super stacked. The whole first round was ridiculous. Whereas 2024 didn't feel like that.
Right.
And 2025 definitely does not feel like that. So
I do love though that Michkov. I would love to get an honest interview with him. That last day of the season, he's 1 goal behind Macklin Celebrini for the rookie goal lead. He is 3 points behind Celebrini for second in rookie points. And he goes out there and he scores 2 goals to pass Macklin and he get 3 points to tie Macklin for second place in the rookie scoring. And I wonder if that was on his mind. He's actually, I wouldn't surprise me. And I don't mean this in a selfish way. It's just he's kind of, sounds like he is a kid that could be kind of that clicks for him. There's a little chip on his shoulder. I mean, and I mean this in a good way. There's a little bit of a chip on his shoulder that way. And it should be, honestly, I've written stories. I've heard stuff too. Again, I'm not trying to I'm not just trying to throw a guy's name into under the bus just because I can. The people I anyway, I don't want to get into that part of it, but just that if I put it out there, I trust in that information. Sure. I guess I'll just leave it at that. But if I were him and I was reading it, or people were telling me, "Hey, this is what people are saying about me," I'd be pissed.
Sorry, my dog's barking.
Okay. Let me know if you gotta take a break. But I think the last thing, I guess, when we move topics is so Matthew Schaefer. Let's say the Sharks. The draft lottery is supposed to be May 5th or 6th.
Oh, cool.
So the Sharks do get the number 1 pick. Of course, Mike made it clear that it's not likely he'll make that trade, but to trade the number 1 pick. But it's more likely than trading the Celebrini pick away. That's what Mike definitely made clear there, which says a lot about Macklin there. But I wonder what kind of offer could move him to move that pick. So
It'd be weird, I think. Also, just because of the way that the draft is, that seems more of a rather than a like. There's just a lot of guys that are kind of on an equal-ish playing field. So much so that it's strange that a team would need Schaefer that badly to want to go one. And you're assuming Schaefer, right?
It could be more intriguing that the Sharks do not have the number 1 pick, and then now they have a cluster of 4
the Sharks need Schaefer.
Yeah, and then so you don't need those forward prospects as much. I know a lot of people like Misa; they want Misa and Chernyshov back together. But yeah, there's arguments for that. But let's say you trade that number 2 or number 3 pick, and that lands you a youngish defenseman that can play now. So
yeah, it's got to be somebody good for sure. You don't want to be the one who trades out Misa and then he ends up being like super amazing for your club. But you're right. The Sharks, the biggest need is defense. And I think Mike Grier mentioned that as well in his exit interview, is that it is a big need. I know you guys asked him a bunch of questions about it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. These never happen because NHL GMs are not fun. But if they were fun, one of these things could happen. Shall we move on?
Yeah, let's talk free agents. Yeah, want to go to that?
Yeah. Alexandar Georgiev will not be back for the Sharks, which was a very quick declaration. I mean, most of everybody saw it coming, but it was one of the few declarations. I think the only one that he's really made about UFAs or RFAs, right?
Yeah.
The only one.
Mike said that Alex had a flight out, and so he requested an earlier meeting.
Getting out of here. You signing me? No, goodbye.
I think Alex probably saw the writing on the wall too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we kind of knew what was going to happen because Alex wasn't great in net.
Yep.
I think the other part of it too that I've kind of alluded to is that Alex is. I really like dealing with Alex myself. I've written some stories about his reading habits, right? He loves to read and stuff like that. And he's also he's actually he seems pretty honest. After a game, he'll tell you kind of, oh, I missed, I should have had that. Or he tries, he's a different kind of interview. He's not like this, like big, gregarious, open out and hairy kind of guy like Blackwood, but he actually is a very good, thoughtful interview. So I like that part of him. But I don't know if he was made to be like kind of the backup kind of guy, and especially in terms of a backup for Askarov, a younger guy, and being a mentorish type. I think Georgiev is maybe better suited, maybe with another veteran, that sort of thing. They're both competing against each other for that number 1 job. Is a better sort of a thing for Georgiev. Maybe what he's more used to. I don't know how he got along with everybody back in New York when he was competing against Shesterkin and Lundqvist when Lundqvist was there at the end of Lundqvist's career. So anyway, though, I never really saw him as the mentor type, I guess, though. And that's not a bad thing, right? That's not everybody's sort of mentality or approach. But I do think the Sharks need a mentor type for Askarov, who is coming in next year. But I do remind people that I checked this with Puckpedia that Askarov actually is still waiver exempt next year, even though he is out of his ELC.
Yeah.
There's different rules that govern these things. So anyway, next year is Askarov's last year being waiver exempt. And so I say that only as it's not a guarantee that he is going to be with the Sharks. It's not one of those things.
Yeah, and I think
just to remind people of that.
So. Grier mentioned it too. He said if Askarov struggles, like we're going to need a guy that could be the guy if he struggles. So he even is anticipating it that there might be, it's not set in stone completely that Askarov's going to like take over the team to next year.
Right. And that's the wise approach because Askarov is 22. You can't expect, and Grier alluded to it too, that you can't expect Askarov to come in here and play 60 games like Connor Hellebuck. You hope that Askarov becomes Connor Hellebuck, but until he actually does it at NHL level, you shouldn't assume that. And so anyway, I think part of the reason why I mention all this is if you read between the lines, I know that a lot of fans, or some fans, not a lot of fans, some fans wanted an Askarov-Romanov pairing, just because that's fun, a tandem, and they seem, at least from what I understood with the Barracuda, they seem to get along. And Romanov has a more kind of outgoing personality that fits kind of working with another goalie, taking a back seat to another goalie. That's not going to work though, because Romanov has how many NHL games, and it doesn't make sense to do that to Askarov, to be like, this is you got to carry us next year, Jarl. So that's not going to work. And so
there were huge question marks when sorry to interrupt you, when
go ahead.
When Calgary did a similar thing with Dan Vladar and Dustin Wolf this year. There were huge question marks. They were like, how are you starting Vladar, who's been a backup for a long time, but he's a younger guy, and then Dustin Wolf, like, that's your tandem. Almost worked out. They almost made the playoffs with it, because Dustin Wolf is an amazing goaltender, but there were still huge question marks about it. And I think that's what he's alluding to.
But I wouldn't even put Vladar in the same kind of book as Romanov, because
Vladar's a way better. Yeah.
Well, Vladar just has more experience too. Vladar has okay. Looking at Vladar's career
100
stats,
games.
He's been playing since 2020. He's been a backup since 2021-22 when Calgary traded for him. So he played 23 games that year, 27 in 2022-23, 20 last year. So he's just more of a career backup type. He's not necessarily, he's never shown that he could be a starter like Georgiev has shown, for example. But he at least he's an experienced guy, at least, though. I would say NHL experienced guy, whereas Romanov is not. And I think that's what Mike is alluding to, that he may not necessarily be looking. I mean, maybe hopefully he's looking for he did mention he's looking for more a 1A, 1B situation. So maybe somebody even better than a Vladar. But if you get stuck with a Vladar, that is not the same thing as being Askarov Romanov tandem.
Yeah. I'm gonna say this because we've been talking about it for a long time. I think they signed Jake Allen. That is my guess in the offseason.
Jake Allen.
Yeah, they try if he wants to come here. Jake Allen, 34, career like 1A, 1B type. Plays around 30 to 40 games a year since 2014, basically. This year he played 31 games with the Devils, get a .908 save percentage. He's been around the league for a long time. He's been around multiple teams. I don't know much about his personality or if he's well liked in the locker room, but he keeps getting contracts. He keeps getting playing time, so he can't be that bad.
I think I've heard good things about him, positive things about him. So, yeah.
And I think that he's at the stage of his career where he probably wants he's not going to want like 8 years. He's going to want 2 or 3 years and some good money.
Yeah. Oh, he's 31? No, he's 34.
He's 34. Yeah. So he's going to want 2 or 3 years and good money, probably. Like realistically, his agent might ask for that. So that kind of fits perfectly with what the Sharks would need. Right.
That was the thing with Mackenzie Blackwood. I know there's a lot of revisionist history now about Kovalenko. It's not a good deal now. You got to look at the deals at the time. They like Kovalenko. He was a good prospect. Could they have picked somebody better, different? Who knows? Yes, with Colorado. But the point of it being, though, that at the time that Blackwood wanted term, Blackwood was just 28. So that just wouldn't have worked with the Sharks, because, again, when Askarov's current contract, or the contract that is about to start, when that contract runs out 2026-27, which is 2 years, $2 million each year, and let's say Askarov is everything that you hope for, and you got to pay him $10 million plus or something like that, that's not going to work with having a backup in Blackwood that's making $5 million a year.
Yep.
So I still get that. I still kind of support that deal. Again, because easy to look at hindsight, and that deal makes sense. I would say, though, that in terms of personality, and I mentioned this on the pod multiple times, Blackwood was a great fit for Askarov. And they got along really well. And so you're kind of chasing that a little bit here. Like, if you could replicate that, it doesn't have to be somebody exactly like Blackwood, but you know what I mean, though, that you had something that worked there. That's what I will say. And so I guess the Sharks could have signed Blackwood to a 5 times 25 like Colorado did, and then worried about that problem of Blackwood 2 years from now about how to get rid of that contract. I don't know, but anyway, though, being realistic now, because Blackwood obviously is off the table. You look at other guys out there, right? Like Forsberg. I don't know much about his personality. Alex Lyon, I've actually spoken with him. He is a pleasure to talk to. I've talked with him once, and I've heard great stories about Alex Lyon. And so he would be a good fit, and he has shown at times capability to take on a larger role. So that's a good one. Actually, Vladar is also a UFA, and he's on the younger side. And there were rumors of the Sharks being interested in him, I think, a couple years ago when he was available, as like, could he be a guy to take on a larger role with the Sharks? I think that was the year. Maybe they traded for Aiden Hill or something like that in the offseason. That Vladar was also a guy that I saw. I don't know if it was a Friedman or LeBrun or whoever kind of connected the Sharks with a Vladar. And Vladar hasn't been amazing in Calgary, but still though, he's not bad. Yo, man, it'd be great to have a Marc-Andre Fleury come here for a year to work with that. That would be hilarious, right? That would be amazing. But too bad. Yeah, Flower is retiring, but that would be such a pleasure.
Frederick Anderson is out there as well. He's 35.
Yeah, he's more
old.
Experienced, right? Yeah, 35. Samsonov, obviously. Vitek Vanacek. James Reimer. I don't think they're going to bring James Reimer back, but Reimer's going to be a free agent. UFA. Those are a couple of the more NHL likely guys. There's a couple other guys here that haven't played or haven't played a lot. So
I would say, given how
Riddick too. Riddick,
Riddick's a good one, but always been more of a backup guy.
Yeah,
I think with the specifics of what they're looking for, don't be surprised if like the money value is a lot higher than what you would expect for a guy like Jake Allen or Anderson or whoever.
That makes sense. Yeah,
and both because you got to pay, and you're the Sharks, so you got to pay. So,
but you can afford it too. So like, if you actually mentioned this before, and it seems high, but it kind of makes sense. Is if you give Allen's making 3.85, and you suggested Allen at even just 5 million AAV, which is high, but just 2 years to match it with Askarov's deal, perfect.
Yep. That way you've got the space. You utilize the cap space for the specific thing that you're looking for, which is a mentor, can take over as a starter if needed. And there's not, unless there's another team out there that has a goalie that they want to dump, that could have worked as well.
And is the probably the number one guy on the market, I think, for this. There is no true number one goalie as a UFA this year. We did see that actually Georgiev is the UFA goalie with the most starts or most games played this past year at 49. So
there's our experience. Let's get that guy.
but yeah, I think Allen sounds like the best fit. And then because I think I've looked into Jake Allen before in past years. The Sharks are always looking for another goalie.
Yeah,
they've been looking for another goalie for basically every off season since I've been covering the team. And so I think I've heard good things about Allen in the room and whatnot. So yeah, I think he is probably she should be your number one target. I would say, based on combination of performance on the ice and performance in the locker room off the ice.
Other than that, I mean, we're going to go in the summer. We'll have many episodes, I'm sure, about free agency and building this roster. So besides that, he didn't really mention specifics about UFA players that he's going after, really. Just kind of getting better.
We do have to talk about Kovalenko, but to your point really quickly, though, he was not specific about any of the other UFAs or RFAs that the Sharks have. UFA Jan Ruda, RFA Clean Costin, Bordeleau, Gushin, Romanov, and there's others, right? And of course, some of these RFAs are with the Barracuda in the playoffs.
Yeah, so it's hard to be like, we're not bringing that guy back. He's while he's playing for your playoff team.
Yeah, not Bordeleau. Yeah, that guy's not coming back, and you need him to help you. Man, no,
that wouldn't work.
He did not do that, which is good. That's what. Yeah, he should not tip his hand there yet. But I did ask specifically about Costin and Romanov and Ruda because they're not going to the Barracuda. their seasons are over. Their seasons, at least as Sharks, are over. So we'll see about these guys. I mean, let's be honest about Kostin. He's an RFA. He's making $2 million a year. There's no way the Sharks are going to qualify him for that amount. I would be surprised even if they brought him back as a just even on a veteran's minimum. He's just too inconsistent. Actually, Ryan Warsofsky really, and actually, I believe him. Ryan Warsofsky has talked up Kostin to us like all season, just like he can do this. And I don't know if it's like the pressure of expectations or whatever, right? That sometimes people run into, but that like there's a lot of talk about the anti-Russian bias that Warsofsky supposedly harbors. I don't see it. I really don't. I don't believe that. But I think when you hear him talk about Kostin, like it's glowing's not the right word because you're talking about a guy and what he's not doing for you a lot. But that Warsofsky really does believe in Kostin's potential, I guess is the way to put it. Sure. And it just hasn't translated. And at the end of the season, Kostin didn't play at all there. I'm sure Kostin was unhappy about it too. And I know that in the interview that Nikolai Kovalenko's dad did with Russian media, Andrei Kovalenko did. I think the site was Russian Hockey, RussiaHockey.ru, but that he mentioned like, oh, how can the Sharks not play Klim Kostin? He was so good in the KHL. But that's a part where that's when I start to question, honestly, Andrei's judgment, because I've watched Kostin very carefully the last 2 years as well. So have you, Keegan, and so have all of us, right? And I don't think there's really that much argument about why Kostin's not in the lineup.
Yeah.
Like Kovalenko, there's more of an argument because it's Kovalenko's first year, big part of the Blackwood trade, probably more kind of consistent in terms of seeing his playmaking ability than we saw with Kostin, or his high-end ability than with Kostin. But like that's when it's like, man, there's a bit of a bias there if you're really trying to tell us that like Kostin needs to be in the lineup every night because not with the Sharks, at least. We weren't seeing it from him. I can see Kostin like he was with the Oilers a couple years ago. If he gets a lot of, I think Kostin probably just needs a lot of confidence, I guess, from the coaching staff and needs to be able to, you play through your mistakes. But there are quite a few of them from Kleem and some really ugly ones too that you got to live with.
And he's not that young anymore. He's 25.
Oh, no. Yeah, he's not.
It's like, yeah, and you're right. Kovalenko gets passed because it's his first year in the NHL. So there's like a little bit of there's an unknown. Sometimes these guys need time to adjust to a different playing style in the NHL rather than the KHL that they've been playing in since they were like, 12. Not 12.
But you could go back, and Warsofsky's exit interview is also posted on the Sharks website. I'll write a little bit more about it, but later. But if you get to the part where I don't remember where in that interview it is, but like he really, if you watch that and you think this guy hates Kostin, hates Russians, he's just trying to put up I mean, you can believe that if you want, that's fine. I'm not telling you what to think, but watch that and tell me if that's how you come out of it thinking. I don't come out thinking of it that way, but that's just me. But anyway, though, I doubt he'll be back, though. I'm just guessing here now. Bordeleau, doubt it. Romanov, doubt it. Gushin, I'm not sure.
Grier.
Grier was interesting. Warsofsky also talked of Grier a bit in his exit interview. And Gregor's game actually has grown from the time he was here before. I don't know if you guys see. I guess you guys don't, because you guys, you guys meaning a lot of people listening. I mean, don't seem to really like him. I mean, we're really unhappy he was in the lineup. But I think as a fourth liner, I can maybe see it. Maybe. Warsofsky did say that his last 3 games or so were actually some of his best.
He seemed to be moving out there a little bit better. I remember a couple of rushes that looked pretty decent, but I unless like it's really the Grier Ferraro show and they want to keep them together for whatever reason.
No, it's not that, but I think the other parts of Grier's game, because we saw that speed, right, and all we saw that 3 years ago, but in terms of like wall work and things like that, there's some improvement there. Like just kind of the details kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like Gregor is always fast. He's fast at any kind of level, at whether he's scratched or not. He's always one of the fastest Sharks, if not the fastest Shark.
Yeah, he's got a lot of speed.
But it's about some of the details, right? And those are the details that give you a career as a fourth liner. If all you are is fast and you can't score, then you're going to bounce between the AHL and the NHL. But Gregor does seem to have improved some of the detail kind of stuff, which might give him a chance on the fourth line. And I don't really mind him there because, all this complaint, we argued about this a lot a couple weeks ago, so I don't want to rehash it too much. But like, if a Gaudreau, if a Gregor are on your fourth line, I don't see it as that big a deal because you don't want a Gushin or a Bordelot on your fourth line anyway. Like, you want them playing up in the lineup. And so if a Gushin is going to be in a lineup, Gushin's got to take Colin Graff's job.
Mm-hmm.
That's the guy he's trying to outplay realistically, right? So that's or he's got to take Luke Cunning's job if Cunning's more on your third line. This is an example of a guy who's on the Sharks third line more often, right? I mean, those are the guys that he's kind of competing with. Gregor being on a fourth line is not that big a deal to me.
I think it's fine. I'd rather see some new faces, even if it's like, I don't know, somebody else, but he's fine. He's just fine. I think if Gushin wants to be back, I think maybe they would qualify him. I think losing his rights for nothing
they would
make a lot of
qualify
sense.
him. I would say, yeah, for sure.
It's whether or not he wants to actually come back to there or try and take a chance somewhere else, like Russia.
Oh, we should talk about Kovalenko too before we exit this topic.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
that's more pressing about going to Russia, for sure.
So yeah, curious about your thoughts about everything that's happened with Kovalenko, and obviously Kovalenko's exit interview, which actually you should really watch.
Good.
The video was, but there's a lot of personality there, and it's a lot of it I think is likable. It was kind of weird too. Some of the things he said were like, oh yeah, like if it's like it was last year, I don't want to come back. Sounds like, oh, that just sounds like your typical malcontent player, your typical malcontent Russian player. But if you watch the whole interview, like he's very open and warm, and like he's very likable. And so it's kind of an interesting mix where he'll be honest about stuff, but he says it with kind of a little bit of a smile in a way. So he's not, so he comes across, I guess he comes across in definitely a different way than some of the quotes that we pulled out suggest, which is why the description I wrote for that story, I made sure to add that there's an openness and warmness if you watch the interview. That's really different for a guy that's basically saying F you to the team, which it's really an interesting interview if you watch it. But anyway, what did you think of everything about Kovalenko? I mean, now we have all this information. Mike Grier's talked about it. Warsawski's talked about it. Kovalenko talked about it. So what do you think?
When he got back into the lineup, I see the reasons why he wanted to be in the lineup. He's got more skill than most of the Sharks forwards that are there, other than obviously like our top 6 guys. But I think he has a lot he turns the puck over so much, like just throws it away. Like it's the last couple games of the season. They're just trying their whatever, but he turns it over so much. And as far as like contract stuff, I would predict that Grier doesn't seem like the type who's going to be, yes, you're going to get these type of minutes. It's like, yes, you're going to get it. Yes, that's not Grier. And if Kovalenko's serious about like, I need these assurances, I think what ends up happening is Grier might trade his rights for like a 4th or 5th round pick. Like, I think that's honestly the way that this is going.
If the offer's out there, which I don't know if there is, because Kovalenko is definitely skilled. And in terms of pure skill, he's more skilled than Colin Graff. He probably, if you look at just pure skill, when you look at what his dad was saying, right? Like, oh, you look at the Sharks, right? And you can see who deserves time or whatnot, right? Sure. I'm not sure if he might have meant like Barclay Goodrow, and why is Barclay Goodrow in the lineup over my son? But that means that he's talking about his son playing the 4th line, which doesn't really help. I think would really help Nikolai Kovalenko's cause in the long run. So if you're looking about who was ahead of him in the lineup in the top 9, then we're talking more like Colin Graff, Will Smith. Will Smith definitely, and we talked a little bit of this early in the season. Like Gushin has a reason to be a little PO'd because Gushin probably should have been in the Will Smith spot in the beginning of the season. We talked about this. He should have been based on training camp. But obviously, Will was the number 4 pick, a little bit more elevated of a status, and Will figured it out. By the end of the season, Will's
was top 2 players in the Sharks.
Outperforming. Yeah, I mean, Will has a lot of Will Smith is not a winning player yet. I want to make clear. Like, I don't think on a good team, he's not a top 6 player, like close. But Will was performing and producing at 19 or 20. He became 20. And so there's by the end of the season, Will Smith, shut up a lot of those arguments about him. But at the training camp roster, the release, whatever, the opening night, Daniil Gushin should have been in Will Smith's spot in terms of just that Will Smith, because Daniil was so good in the preseason and whatnot. So, but anyway, that's neither here nor there anymore. But when you talk about Kovalenko, we're talking about his competition. I don't think we're talking about Gaudreau or even Gregor, right? We're talking about third line. Well, some nights I guess Gregor or Gruncher might have been in that spot, but still, we're talking more about guys like Graff, guys who are like consistent in the top 9, which is Graff is one guy who was in there. Obviously, Kovalenko's not playing over Eklund or Toffoli or the centerman, either Wenberg, and obviously not Celebrini, all that stuff too, right? But that's what we're kind of talking about with the Kovalenko. And he's not good enough to be assured that time in the NHL. I don't think any team would assure him that time, even close. And I'm not saying that he's looking for insurances either, but what I guess I'm saying is that even his skill is not so good that it's like, oh yeah, this guy's got to be in our top 6.
Yeah.
Or even top 9. Right.
I think I don't think the balance has been found yet between them. And it would be like Kovalenko seems to enjoy being here. Obviously, he's he came over from, he doesn't want to give up after 1 year, I imagine.
And he's working hard on his English. I believe him. His English has improved.
So I think, but I think a team that wants to add a little bit of depth, but has like a team like Tampa or Florida that have great teams, but want to try out a skilled guy in the bottom 6 that they only have like 5th and 6th to give up, they might be interested in a guy like Kovalenko.
You think so? I mean, you think he can be in the top 9 of a really good team on a consistent basis, though?
I don't know. But I think they would try it for a 5th to see. I think that's the point. Is the unknown bit is because he's just here for a year. You know what I mean?
I guess the part, though, that is interesting in terms of what you say that I think of now you say it is that he seemed okay with Colorado because he was just like, well, look at the lineup, right? Whereas San Jose was like, look at that lineup. Why am I not in?
Why am I not going higher?
So maybe, if Tampa did want to try him, he at least wouldn't wouldn't be as upset, I guess, if he's like, well, Brandon Hagel's ahead of me and Nikita fucking Kucherov is ahead of me.
Right. I'm not Kucherov.
And that's what he's seeing ahead of him. I would say though that I don't think he's helped his cause though even though I like him personally. He's funny, as you saw in the interview, right? And he's different in a not in a good way, but than most interviews, and maybe a lot of Russian players who come here maybe aren't as warm and friendly with the media in some ways, right? That he shows a lot of personality, but he could have done all that without the podcast, without his dad talking as much as he has. Like, I don't think that's helped his cause, at least in the NHL. Like, is he skilled enough to be an NHL player, to be an NHL top 9 player? Well, for sure he is.
Yeah, I think he is.
It's not a question of talent and skill, right? But it's a question of, will he do some of the other things because he's not going to be a 100-point player where you forgive a lot of stuff, right, in the NHL. So he may end up being like a 50-point player in the NHL, which is pretty good, but you've got to be good at other stuff when that's your kind of your ceiling NHL player. You can't just
Yeah.
That's not enough points to put up with all the other stuff, like defensive stuff, giveaways, all that kind of stuff, right? And so he does strike me as a type of player that, yeah, it's just the fit isn't there, the NHL in him. It's not that he's not good enough, but like, yeah, just the fit of other things, right? So,
it's be interesting. I just don't see it. Like, there's too much strife. I feel like he's gonna be gone. But we'll see.
yeah. I guess the last thing I'd say about it is, again, the revisionist stuff about the trade in Colorado. I got to look back, but Colorado's obviously not a very deep system anyway. You weren't going to get Callum Ritchie, so you can kind of throw that out of mind for a goalie. Yeah.
I think the
So
end of
I
the
wonder
day,
if they had another
got
guy. I don't know.
Yeah, you got, like Grier said, it's not very frequent you get even a second for these UFA goaltenders.
No, it's not.
So.
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
I don't. I mean, the Sharks ended up with the worst record in the NHL because they traded Blackwood and Granlund, but because of Blackwood, they ended up with the worst. Like, they would have had probably third, fourth worst, maybe second, if they didn't trade him.
I was thinking about this with the Logan Couture stuff. That imagine if they started the season with Blackwood, with healthy Couture, with Granlund. And what is a healthy Couture? A healthy Couture is basically like a more polished Macklin Celebrini, like 18-year-old Macklin Celebrini.
Sure.
The productivity would have been about the similar, right? But just the more polished, right? Like Couture is not going to throw the puck away. Couture is going to know what to do defensively, which Macklin doesn't has. Macklin has the right mentality. Macklin wants to play defense, which is really important for 18-year-old, but Macklin doesn't necessarily know how to play defense at an NHL level yet, right? Like Logan does, right? So it would have been, like I said, a more polished Macklin, which is really valuable. And I wonder what the cap of that team is. It's not going to be playoffs, but like,
it's better.
It would have probably landed them probably outside of the prospects that you want in this draft for sure.
I think, and this isn't obviously, like, it was way more important to be really bad the last two drafts than it is this draft. But
right,
it doesn't hurt. Sharks still need a lot. So at the end of the day, I'm not mad that we got a second for Blackwood. Hopefully we get a good enough goalie for the next 2 years in the setting of having Askarov. So
yeah, and then I think another thing too is that not every. If Kovalenko doesn't work out, and Grier said it, and I actually agree with him. This isn't me just agreeing with management. Not every guy's going to work out. Like,
no, yeah.
Not every, your pro scouting is going to miss. Your amateur scouting is going to miss. You're not going to get everybody. So you're not going to hit on everybody. And so,
did you know Kovalenko was born in Raleigh, North Carolina, by the way?
Yeah. His dad was playing there at the time.
I know. And I looked that up months ago when I saw that. I was like, Raleigh, North Carolina? And I was like, oh, he must have been with his dad. And I just
but his dad went back to Russia at a pretty young age, so that's why he didn't learn English. He didn't grow up here, so But yeah, anyway, so I think again, there's a lot of revisionist history going on back here. So like, I just like to remind people that we try to look at trades like at when they happen, and that's the best way to look at it because,
for sure,
of course. It's easy to look back on the Eric Lindros trade, right? And be like, oh, Peter Forsberg, blah, blah, blah. Like, Eric Lindros was like the shit. And it just didn't happen for Eric, right? But at the time, that trade made sense to people. People were like, oh, that's a huge.
So did the Erik Karlsson to the Sharks trade.
Oh, that's so revisionist. Like, that's
the Sharks like killed it.
Any Sharks fan that goes back to that.
I know.
Because at the time,
we all loved it.
Yeah, and that's when I was first covering the team. Like that was like a month before I moved over for good, but I knew I was coming to move over to cover the Sharks. And all the ESPN, all the pundits were like, that's all they traded for Erik Karlsson? Because no one thought that Sharks pick would become a number 3 pick. that's what has actually changed things. I do think that's changed things where everyone's like,
Absolutely.
oh, that could happen. That
Holy
if we don't
shit.
protect our picks, that's why everyone protects their picks now. I do think there is a
Yep.
direct correlation between that
Speaking
that
of
mistake by Doug Wilson.
speaking of like a young center, we could do double revision, and if the Senators try to trade like Tim Stützle to the Sharks plus a bunch of other stuff for the Celebrini pick, maybe.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know?
I wonder how that's a fun one to look up, because that is another young center, right?
Yeah.
To think about, right? So yeah, that would have been like,
That's
I
if
don't
they
know.
like tried to tear it all down and stuff, and like we're trying to redo their already a million rebuild, but they made the playoffs this year.
They made
So
the
good for
playoffs
them.
though, yeah. And actually, I'm gonna give you a little preview. I actually had Jake Sanderson fourth in my Norris voting, so
Nice.
teasing that out there. But anyway, though, yeah, that would have been like Stützle, and like Stützle is so valuable. You're not getting the Ricky Williams package for Stützle's in the deal, so it would have been like Stützle and like maybe Ottawa's first round pick last year, wherever that landed.
Yeah. I think they had like 8 or 9, I think, because they had like
pretty
they got
high, nice pick
Yakimchuk.
still. Yeah, pretty nice pick still. For the number one, maybe that would have been like a
We would have
start,
thought
maybe,
about
right?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, though, yeah, the Carlson one, that's the one I look at. It's like, come on, guys, like, yeah.
Revisionist.
Anyway, that is totally revisionist, because like Josh Norris was not that celebrated a prospect at that moment. That's a credit to Doug Jr. right there, because that was his very first round pick. If Norris hadn't gotten hurt, he would have had. I mean, he's had a nice career, but he would have had an even better career. But anyway, though,
let's move on. We got a couple more topics to talk
oh
about.
yeah, I'm sorry. I know we're kind of
rambling.
Anyway, so we look at trades.
Yeah.
As back then, we don't revise it because that's too easy. So okay, let's go on.
We have the Sharks' next captain, which Grier said it's sacred, and I don't know. Basically, it's a sacred thing. A good group of leaders. He entertained at some point the possibility of not having a captain.
Yeah.
It's got to be Tyler Toffoli. It's got to be.
You think so?
I think so. I just have this. I don't know. The more and more I think about it, like, yeah, it just makes the most sense to me. And
Tyler
did he just
did
have
host
like
a year-end?
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't he just host like a year-end get together for everybody? Yeah.
There's some cool pictures of it that Kat Toffoli posted, and Felicia Wenberg, Alex's wife, posted. So anyway, on Instagram. But I do want to describe kind of the setting of this really quickly, though, that we had about 35 minutes with Mike. It ended, and then Mike actually stopped us before we left, and he's like, I actually wanted to talk about this. And we were talking about other things with Mike that we forgot to ask Mike about it. We should have. That's on all of us for not doing it in the press conference. It's unusual for a GM to be like, I want to talk about this. He's like, you guys forgot to ask me about this, but this is important, and I want to get this out there. And so that's why in my story I said he went out of his way, because he did. And Mike went out of his way to tell us that that's the main message, that he is in no hurry. And I don't know what that means in terms of, because I did ask, are you comfortable going next year without a captain? And he said he seemed comfortable with it. And the second question I should have asked, I forgot to, is, and he might have answered it, because Mike is usually receptive or willing to answer. I know receptive, I don't know if he likes them, but I'm just doing my job to specific questions. I should have asked, would you guys consider Macklin for it? Because that's what everybody is kind of wondering, right? And so we don't know. I don't know if it's automatically Toffoli. It could be one of those things where they go alternates next year. Maybe they add Macklin as an alternate, and then they give it to. We know it's going to be Macklin one day, so that's not the question. But like, it's just when. And so maybe not next year, but maybe 2 years from now, after Macklin has some time as an alternate, maybe. That's just a thought. That's possible. I don't know. I don't know. It could be Tyler in the end. I kind of believe. I think that's something that they're talking about.
Yeah.
I think that was the point that Mike was trying to make, was just that it's really important to him, and that
He
one
doesn't
day
know.
if they do announce it, maybe training camp next year, but it's after a lot of talking about it and whatnot, right? So
I would say don't expect it before we at least get like the addition of free agents and stuff like that for the locker room. So
It's not something that we're gonna get like a mid-season announcement, or I don't expect that at the draft or something like that. So yeah.
Will Smith is going back to center. Will Smith. That was also a headline of the thing, is that he's starting next year. We'll probably get him back in there and see how it goes, says Grier. He's more than capable of being a really good center in this league, a point-producing center, an impactful center. He played some center this year, played some wing this year.
Well, he started at center and didn't work out. I think that's why he went to wing. So
and he did well. Like, I think
at
the way
wing
that at wing he did well. At center he was still struggling, but he was also learning the league then too. So he's following that Thomas Hurdle path of many other young players of wing to center.
I still wonder though. I still think he might end up as a wing. I know a lot of people think that too. Remember when Willie Macklin was supposed to become a center?
Still not a thing. I hate when I've never liked it. I still don't like it. It doesn't work for William.
No, but he was supposed to be though. When they drafted him, that was the intention. And so that's all I mean is that sometimes that might be your intention, but maybe the NHL tells you something different, right? I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Will, but I'm just saying that they can try it and we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah. I think even like Will Smith has a way better chance of sticking at center than William Macklin. That would be my opinion.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't know.
Because he played it his whole career, and he like
didn't William play it though throughout Sweden? He was a center.
He did, but not when he was in the professional leagues. He was wing. And then he tried center for a little while.
That's after the Sharks, but wasn't he a center with Djurgården though too?
Yeah, and that's when he did not do well. And that was like
right.
The whole thing is like it never. Once he got out of juniors in any professional league, he didn't look good at center.
No, but you can't compare SHL to NCAA though. So, or was he doing it all Svenskan? He was doing all. Well, he was both SHL and all Svenskan, right? He played in.
No, he only played SHL because they got demoted the year that he came over.
Oh, okay. So he's never been in all. Okay, so
I don't think
so SHL is higher than NCAA too. So I don't know if that's an apt comparison.
Yeah, I think I just have a little bit more faith in Will Smith's game at center than I did Eklund's. But you're right. Like it's hard to compare the NCAA and SHL. But
because the Sharks were pretty sure about that back then.
Yeah,
about Eklund going back to center. So.
Oh, Sharks were sure of a lot of things back then.
Oh, that's very true. I mean, I would say that, like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Will's frame he's a little bigger than William was at that age. So
sure.
So that will help, but
we'll see.
I don't know. I'm not so convinced on either side of this. So
it's interesting that he's already though recognizing like. Yeah, the 1-2 punch has to happen. If we don't have Smith at center, we don't really have a second punch on that. Like Wenberg's not your.
Well, you know what I would argue with this though is that a lot of people assume that Will Smith was going to be center last year, and the Sharks protected against that by signing Wenberg, having Granlund around. They knew Couture wasn't going to be around, so they needed insurance for Couture not being around, right? And what you want is too many centers to protect Macklin, to protect Will. And so I don't think that's a deterrent toward adding another center this offseason, as long as that center can play wing, I would say like Granlund, right? But anybody else like that too. So I think some people are I see are like, oh, they're just going to go for a wing. It's going to be Celebrini, Smith, Wenberg next season. I mean, it will end up being that, but that doesn't. You have to be flexible about that. Like the Sharks smartly, they were last offseason, because I reported that they also were interested in Chandler Stevenson, and they were clearly looking for center depth, and they ended up signing Wenberg, right? And so
which
You
was a
want
great call because I think
yeah.
Stevenson ended up getting like a shit ton of money and like,
Oh yeah. The Sharks were never going to match that kind of term.
oof.
I think it was more a check-in, like, hey,
Mhm.
would you be interested in? And then obviously the market for Stevenson exploded with Seattle giving him a 7-year offer, right? Which Sharks are never going to come close to. So that's what I mean. I don't mean the Sharks were like deep into it,
Yeah.
but more like I think they checked in on him, like, hey,
Yeah.
what's it going to take? How many years, etc. Oh, okay, it's not going to work with us, but so.
I think long
Anyway,
term they see that as like the 1-2, and they're really hoping that
oh
Smith
yes,
can
I
be the
agree.
1-2.
I agree. I agree. But what I'm saying is that I would not just give Will Smith that job next year to be 2C next year. And it'd be wiser to have some insurance.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Or
have
go
that
sign
insurance.
Granlund. We can
I
revision
mean, again, I try to avoid because
Granlund love from Sheng.
yeah, exactly right. I try, but he does fit though,
This kind
because
of
he was
this
willing to
kind of
play wing, right? Yeah,
yeah.
so
This
he's
kind
good
of
at
goes
it
into
too.
our one of our last topics from my
Mm,
career, which is will the Sharks sign any big free agents?
right.
Which you guys asked him last year, a very similar question, like what are you looking at? Um what's your
The max
philosophy?
contract that
Yeah.
he would kind of
And he
offer.
he was like, I'm not gonna hand out 7 or 8 year deals. And he kind of repeated the same thing. He's not happy about it, but he said, I guess there's a possibility of it this year at
Yeah,
least. So
there
he's
was definitely different language because if you
more
go
open,
back,
I guess.
if you listen to that interview that I specify, like you said last year that
Yes.
you were gonna hold it at 4 and 5. He did say that very clearly last year, and at the same kind of time like situation, like post, how do you say it, exit interview or whatever situation, right? And
Hmm.
he stuck to that. The longest contract he gave was Tyler Toffoli. Like we mentioned with Chandler Stevenson, I believe that they checked in, but I don't think that it was ever really serious, right? Like they were like, well,
Yeah.
we'll give you 6 years, Chandler, or anything like that, right? No, right? I think they were pretty, they kind
Hmm.
of knew what they were trying to do, and in terms of the contract length, right? And so for Mike to say, I guess there's a possibility of it, actually might be meaningful. So I do wonder about that. But it does sound like something that he's resistant towards still. So to read the full quote, I guess there's a possibility of it. I think it's still not something I'm excited to do, to hand out, 7 or 8 year deals or anything like that. And I didn't ask about 7 or 8 year deals. I just said more than 5, which I guess, of course, is not a lot more you can offer than 7 or 8.
Yeah. And who are
But
like the only one you're offering a 7 or 8 year deal to is Mitch Marner, right? Like that's the
I
one,
thought there was
right?
a couple other guys that could warrant it. Obviously, Rantanen was in the picture before Dallas
Ekblad, Besser, I
signed him.
guess.
I mean, yeah. I mean, then we're talking about guys are I guess a cut below
Yeah.
Rantanen, right? So,
And Marner, yeah.
I mean, let's see in terms of age too. Like,
Ehlers, but he's a little older.
how old is Ehlers?
29.
Oh, he's okay.
I
So
mean, they're
yeah,
not too far off, but I
not
it's
too
I
far
mean,
off, but still, yeah. I mean, Marner's the prime age for sure.
yeah. That's the only one I think that if for some reason Mitch Marner wanted to be here, that would be something you could consider.
Besser is maybe not a 7 year, but
Sure.
that would get him here. But because I don't know if teams are Marner, every deal with Marner is gonna get if Marner actually hits free agency is gonna be 7 or it's gonna be 8 if you do a sign and trade with Toronto.
Yep.
Besser is not in that class. Besser's like a couple rungs below, still a very good player.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not convinced that Besser's going to get a 7 year offer from
Hmm.
anybody. So yeah, like so that maybe that's the kind of class where like okay, maybe Ekblad too, right? Ekblad I think might get a 7 year,
Might.
but
Yeah.
he's a maybe. He's in sort of the Besser kind of I don't know a tier. And
Hmm.
so yeah, so I don't know. But that's interesting though that he said that though that he did leave the possibility, but yeah, it doesn't sound like this is the off season. He did say that too. That I'm not gonna go crazy. He says it's area off season. But there's gonna be some off season where he might
He
be
has to
like,
go crazy. Yeah.
yeah, or yeah. He won't say the
Right. At some
words,
point.
but he will. He just will not say I won't go crazy, which is the absence of the statement means that maybe this is the off season that the Sharks really go for it. But there are some interesting guys out there though that you can avoid. You can avoid the long term kind of thing. I mean, obviously, like it's kind of funny because the Sharks had their dance with him a long time ago, but Tavares would be good on a short term contract. He's better than Granlund, and he can play wing, obviously, and he is a proven leader sort of type, right? And also has experience of being a number one pick and having a lot of expectations placed on him. So I think I've read that Tavares obviously wants to return to Toronto. That's his number one thing, but we'll see what happens in the playoffs, right? If Toronto flames out again, they might just be like, we need to kind of change the calculus here a little bit. If Toronto wins the Stanley Cup with him, then he's going to go back, I'm sure, right? Matt Duchene's obviously an interesting one, very productive, 34. I mean, his contract's probably the best deal in the NHL, at least this past year. $3 million a year for 80 points. But yeah, a guy like Ehlers would be a longer term deal. You're looking at some of the obvious guys here. Will Smith loves Patrick Kane, so there's that.
Yeah, there's a lot of these interesting veteran guys that have come off their big deals, right? Like Jamie Benn, like you mentioned, Patrick Kane, Brad Marchand, like these Matthew Shane, like these guys that were staples of the league as stars.
Well, superstars. I mean, this is like a superstar free agency class in 2017.
Exactly. You're 8 years ago. This is like the class. But they're all coming out. But it's they're looking for money and they're looking for an opportunity to win, right? So like they're probably not coming to the Sharks, depending. You never know. But
you never know, right? Like Toffoli. So there's things that work, right? Like Granlund worked here because he revitalized his career here, and he liked especially William Macklin and Fabian Zetterlund. Obviously not here anymore, right? But he had a good relationship with those guys, right? Yeah, Tavares probably you would think he's going to chase a cup.
Probably.
Duchene, just guessing. Maybe not Duchene because Duchene's been kind of a bit of a journeyman a little bit in some ways, right? And so maybe Duchene's just a little more open. And Duchene was not a number one pick, but a very high pick. And I think Duchene was part of that awful Avalanche team too, that they turned into a Stanley Cup winner in 2016-17. So he's got that kind of experience on that side of the rebuild. Kane's won his Stanley Cup, so maybe Kane is just sort of I'm fine with without it. Brad Marchand's on this list too. That's an interesting one.
Brent Burns is on this list. Taylor Hall is on this list. This is like the 2016, 17, 15 like Hall of Fame class, right? Like
even so Jamie Benn, Claude Giroux, Taylor Hall.
Damn, these are the stars of 10 years ago.
It was like a really good pack of hockey cards a decade ago.
This is really funny, actually. Just looking at the UFAs, like there's normally guys like retire or like it's not often that you get all of these types of guys.
Typically a free agency class is going to be guys like that. Because last year we had like Stamkos, for example.
True,
this does feel like there's more of them this year though than last year. So
which are not great pickings for the Sharks, if I'm going to be totally honest.
They're not, but these are players that can still, in theory, help you though. So yeah, and that's the point that it can still do a lot for you. I think so. I wonder. I don't see his name here. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But and the defense list is definitely not as deep, and that's definitely the priority for the Sharks. I would say even more so than a center or a winger.
I was interested with how not like that he was vague, but that he wasn't as specific. Like, yes, we're gonna go get a guy with the defense thing, because you guys asked him, I think, a few times, like, is defense a priority? And he said yes, and then he kind of said, we got to break out of our zone better, we got to defend better, etc. I don't know. I wanted more like, we got to overhaul this baby because like we're gonna have.
That seemed pretty specific.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess specific is like what he wanted to look for, but I wanted like I don't know. I wanted more. I think. That's just
we got to break out better. I mean, that's talking about the defense.
That's talking about what he wants to like improve upon. But I mean, like, I would have said I wanted like, yes, we need to improve by getting more players in free agency and trade. Like, not like we're gonna try to make Timothy Liljegren a top 4 still, or we're going to try to ride Ferraro 25 minutes a night. Like I wanted more of a, we need to improve by getting different players.
No,
I don't think
I don't.
that this is a good defensive group at all.
I would disagree with you. Like I think there's awareness. He's smart enough for that. Look what he did last offseason, right? Like
Hopefully,
he tried to put Ferraro lower in the line, and he did by acquiring Wallman and CC. And I think that Wallman got moved just because Edmonton came with an offer that maybe surprised Mike.
No, and I mean, I think I agree with you. I think that he is smart enough to know that is gonna like what he needs to do. But I wanted him to be like, yeah, that's what we need to do is get better defenders. You know,
he just wanted to throw Ferraro under the bus.
Not specifically Ferraro. Like he can
I'm just messing with you.
But we do. Like we cannot run. Like
I know. I agree. I think he knows it too. Yeah. So like
he knows. Hopefully he knows.
Yeah, I do think he knows it. I mean, we didn't know that he knew it until last offseason, because last offseason he actually made very tangible steps. Whereas the offseason before that, 2 off seasons ago, he didn't really, right? They tried to try out Ferraro. They had no power play quarterback to start the season and all that kind of stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so last offseason, I think, was very clear that that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to push guys down the lineup. So so I think he'll do the same. It's just that there is just nobody in this class of free agency though that is like, I'm gonna give this guy.
Yeah, I mean Gavrikov and Ekblad are kind of like the guys, but
right. There's some good players, but
we'll see.
And it's good players that may get 6 or 7 year contracts, which that's where I think Mike is taking himself out of that.
Yeah.
Right. Like Chandler Stevenson wants to come to the Sharks for 4 years last year. That maybe Mike thinks about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's not going to give 6-7 years, right? And so maybe same thing with Ekblad and same thing with Gavrikov, which may take Mike out of the market, may take the Sharks, not just Mike, take the Sharks out of the market, because the Sharks are saying like, yeah, we'll give you 4, Aaron Ekblad, maybe 5 if you really need it. And someone offers Ekblad 7 years, say Chicago, just throwing out a team, offers Ekblad 7 years. Okay, well, I'm going to go to Chicago, you know? So,
yeah.
Right.
And that's what I worry about is that, I mean, I think he knows that too. And it's not the right free agents class to be doing that, but it will make me a little sad.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's also, go ahead. Yeah.
It's a bad defensive group right now.
It is. No, it's an awful defensive group. I mean, it's the same. We're stuck with the same thing that we're stuck with at the end of the, at the end of last season, before they acquired Wallman and CC. We basically have the same group with some promise from Luka Madulin as they ended up with last offseason. Yeah, you can't do that. But and Ekblad's somebody that I will look into. He's young enough, and that I might think about 7 years, but I don't know if Mike and his staff think so. That's the only other guy I think. Gavrikov, I don't think so, but Ekblad, I might think about it. There's also, of course, though, the avenue of making trades, obviously, right? So I don't think that defensemen are hard to acquire, which does make a little bit like trading Wallman, which I still think was a good trade. I'm never going to deviate from that, like hindsight, whatever, right? But it made sense at the time, just because it was like maybe too good an offer for a guy that, again, was valued at negative when you acquired him, right? And it's like, okay, and was good, but I don't know, was good enough that he's going to be on your next playoff team, right? And so that still makes sense to me. But though that how do you say it though, that there are trade avenues out there though. Defensemen are hard to acquire, but there are avenues if free agency doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And the Sharks do have a lot to trade too. So.
And that was part of the press conference too, that we didn't have as a topic, but he did mention that they might move around with these picks, like up or down, trade out for somebody. Because he's got 2 this year and 2 next year in the first round, as well as second round picks. So,
and maybe a final point here, or kind of close to closing point. Like when asked about trading the number 1 pick, he specifically said, and I think that makes sense. This is what any team's looking for, but especially the Sharks that are kind of on the up and up, but they're not looking to add a bunch of veteran guys, right? He said, yeah, if the right package of young established players comes up for the number 1 pick. He said young established players.
He did,
right?
yes. Yeah, he mentioned that.
And so that's kind of interesting. So that's maybe the Ricky Williams trade doesn't work because those are just all picks anyway, right?
Yep.
So anyway, that's I think a very realistic avenue for the Sharks. Somebody out there, and we can take a quick look at the RFA list. I know a lot of people talk Dobson. Obviously, that's been a popular topic conversation. The Buffalo guys, right? Byram, Power, depending on what you think of them. So, going along that course is possible too.
I think I'm very excited for the CUDA playoffs and also for actual like RFA, UFA announcements and stuff. And I think we'll have a way better idea of what the team's going to be after that. But
sure.
So it was an interesting interview with Grier. I think there will be more interesting stuff as we get towards the draft. And the Sharks are going to get Schaefer, so this whole defensive problem is going to be fine. We're just going to get Schaefer, and he's going to lead us to victory. Somehow he's healed his collarbone. He'll come into training camp. I think it's 17. I think he's born in September,
really?
So
wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he will be 17 when he's coming into training camp, which is wild. He's very, very young for this draft class. That also kind of adds to the runaway of why people think he needs to go first overall. I agree. I mean, I like him a lot, and I really, really think he would be, like how Chicago ends up getting their Duncan Keith and Pittsburgh ends up getting their Chris Letang. Like that's the kind of player. You
think he's a true blue number 1?
I think so. I think it's.
Okay. I've heard some pushback on that from I think scouts, but
yeah, I get what you're saying. I think it's more more likely than the guys that were picked last year's draft and most of the last couple drafts. Not like more than Luke Hughes and that thing, but more than Sam Dickinson. Yeah, probably more than Zeev because he's a little bit bigger.
Not a better prospect than Luke Hughes, you think? I mean, the year of, I mean.
In hindsight, no, but at the year of, he's a better one. Yeah, probably.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Hindsight is easy. So okay, just
I think it's possible, or I'm just wish casting it. Like I'm just really hopeful that it is. So I want it to be the Chris Letang and the Duncan Keith of the Sharks. Who's I guess the king equivalent would be Doughty, but he's not going to be Doughty. He probably won't.
Right. Well, Dolan is really the one that's okay.
Dolan.
That guy is going to be a number 1 guy. Like no one had any doubt about him, right? Like that's a rare defenseman that has that much hype around him when he is drafted. And that's sort of the measuring stick that I've asked other people about, and he's not that. So
I think nobody's certain.
He's in the hype.
No, he's not, and I think nobody's certain, right? Because of how his season went. Everybody's kind of a little like apprehensive about it because of how it went, but he looked excellent in the 24 games he played or 20 games he played this year. So that's the problem is all the tools are there. The size is there. The skating's there. The brain's there. The offensive production is there. The transition ability is there. It's just, we didn't see enough of him. So
you hear good things about him as just a kid too. So
yeah. And he's young, really young. So this is like it's a lot of wishing on hopefulness, but he's a perfect addition for the Sharks. And that's why they need the number 1 overall pick or just trade with Chicago who can take Misa and then it's fine. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. But that's the question. Actually, we should get on a Blackhawks beat writer. Like, if Schaefer is that good, then why wouldn't Chicago just keep him? Because even though they have good defensemen, they may not have a clear-cut number 1, though, right? Between Levshunov and Rinzel and Vlasic. So
yeah, they've got a bunch of like top 4 guys.
Yeah, number 2 guys, maybe, right?
Number 2
guys, right? So,
yeah, but I think that was what Levshunov was kind of projected as at his top was kind of like number 2 guy.
More so, right? Yeah.
So you're right. Maybe they would just say, our forward group will figure it out around Bedard. So it'd be cool to have I think around the draft lottery, we should try and reach out to our like Chicago and who else? Who's down at the bottom? Nashville, Boston, which is super weird that both of those teams are in the top 5.
Well, Anaheim is still in the
Anaheim
mix, right? Yeah, so
get a little bit of a crosstalk around the NHL. Yeah, weird. Yeah, Philly, Nashville, and Boston are in the bottom 5. That's super strange.
Well, Boston being there is weird, right? They really bottomed out though after they traded Marchand, though. Yeah. Funny thing though is that Pastrnak kept putting up points though. Like I was looking at something because I did my voting yesterday for the NHL awards, and I just was looking at some stuff, and like I think like the second half or from some point on, Pastrnak led the league in points. I think I got to look at it like maybe like from like February 1st on or something like that. So
yeah, he had like over 100 points, right?
Yeah, he just kept scoring, even though the team kept losing. Not putting it on him, but
I'm excited. I'm excited to watch a Boston team with a top 5 pick. That's interesting to me. Like they're obviously, I think, need to go through some retooling, but they still have pieces there that are very, very good. So
yeah. Oh, here's a fun question for you, just really quick. From February 1st on, Kucherov led the NHL in scoring with 46 points. I mentioned Pastrnak at 45 points in 29 games. Guess number 3. I unless you're really up on it, I would guess that you will not guess it.
It's not Connor McDavid, so it's gonna be.
It's one you wouldn't guess. So yeah, anyway, yeah. So you shouldn't throw out the names that you would think of at first. I'll give
Jason
you a clue.
Robertson. I don't know.
It's not Jason Robertson. I'll give you a clue. Test your music knowledge. Smooth.
Got nothing.
Carlos Santana.
I know the song.
I'm really
still lost on the.
right here.
I know Smooth by Carlos Santana, but I don't know
who's the other guy in Smooth.
I don't know.
Matchbox 20.
Oh man, like I know the band, but come on.
Oh man,
Rob Thomas.
Keegan.
Rob Thomas.
Robert Thomas.
Yes. Okay.
There you go.
I didn't. All right. Yeah. Like
Robert Thomas with the St. Louis Blues, 45 points in 30 games to end the season. That's.
I want you to know that I didn't get it because I thought of Robert Thomas. I thought of Rob Thomas in Matchbox 20. So just want to put that out there. But it just took me forever. But anyway, yeah, that's weird. Robert Thomas.
Yeah. That's obviously the Blues made the playoffs. I know Holloway went bonkers. So yeah,
Holloway and Broberg were like, here's some free money for you. Like it's not free; they had to pay for it. But interesting turnover thing. I find that those kind of teams like St. Louis, Washington, the teams that have avoided the rebuild, super interesting. Like St. Louis has had down years and they've missed playoffs and they made playoffs, etc. But they're interesting because teams don't normally have that type of longevity. Sharks being obviously one that had it for a very long time,
right?
And then the turnover by Washington. We'll see how real that is once Ovi's actually retired. But I think most people would actually say that the driver is their coach rather than anybody else on that team.
The other part I would say with that too, with Washington and St. Louis, is that as much as it looks good now that they're in the playoffs, right? Like, let's see what they actually do in the playoffs, because even though Washington has managed to, they're back their number 1 seed or whatever. Like, we'll see how long they last, because since they won the cup, I don't think they've had a long playoff run. Since St. Louis won the cup, I don't think they've had a long playoff run. And so if you're just the first round and out team, or even second round and out team, that's not really the goal either, right? So
that's true. You have to break the trend and win another cup after you've won your cup.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a great example of a team doing that. Even the Kings, right? The Kings were only a couple of years really in the woods after they went into the rebuild.
Well, Pittsburgh, but they had 7-8 years before they didn't move between.
Well, Pittsburgh's a different compare, because Pittsburgh, they had Crosby in his prime and Malkin too. So that's not the
doesn't really count.
I'm talking about teams that kind of hang on, like Washington, right? Like the Blues to some degree, right? With maybe not as clear a star name like Ovechkin, right? And I'm looking at the Capitals' playoff ledger since their Stanley Cup. They've lost in their first round in 5 of the last 6 years. And they didn't make the playoffs in 2022-23. I think the Blues will be similar. The Kings, right? The Kings were able to. Kings are in this because they have Kopitar and Doughty. Kopitar is still remarkably good and keeping them in it, but they've also been a first round and out team. St. Louis, since they won the Stanley Cup, they lost a couple first rounds. They lost in the second round, and then they missed the playoffs for a couple of years there. And so I don't know if that's the model that you want to emulate. Actually, I get it if you have Ovechkin because you have that guy, but like St. Louis doesn't have that guy that you need to kind of keep trying to win with, right? And I don't know.
You're just the Minnesota Wild of the NHL. Did you?
Yeah, that's
the
what
Wild
you kind of
are,
right? Yeah.
The Wild are making the playoffs with $15 million in dead cap right now, which is insanity.
And that's impressive, and it's by itself, but it doesn't really count or matter, right? And unless you win a Stanley Cup or at the very least have deep playoff runs.
Yeah, the Wild are interesting. It's a good team, but it's always the same, like middle of the road team. It feels like.
Right. Especially this year too. If they had been healthy, maybe with Kaprizov, they could have got themselves a better playoff position. But they're in the hole again. So
yeah, every year they're like a first or second round team, or mostly first round team that gets knocked out. Sometimes second round, and that's it. And it's gotta suck. But I guess it's you gotta weigh it out. Like the Sharks never won a cup either. So what's the difference between the Sharks and the Wild?
That's fair, but like looking at the Washington example though, where like it feels like a lot of these teams that are kind of falling out of it are trying to emulate that. I mean, that's fine and all, but let's actually see what they do in the playoffs. And I'm not discounting it. They're a number 1 seed, so they might have a really good run in them this year.
Yeah.
But I would argue too, this is a whole nother podcast, but that deep playoff runs matter a lot more than first round and out. Like the San Jose Sharks for the prime of the Doug Wilson era, 2003 to 19, feel a lot different than I would say even the St. Louis Blues before they won the Stanley Cup. The St. Louis Blues had like a 20-year playoff run. If you want to go back in history, that 25-year maybe, right? Where St. Louis, I think never made a final. They lost maybe they didn't even make a lot of conference finals either. And definitely different than the Wild. So yeah, I would argue vigorously in favor of what the Sharks have done because the Sharks have put out teams that you think should win a cup, right?
Yes, every year.
They've gone quite far. And Minnesota, none of these teams that Minnesota has put out has ever seemed like, oh yeah, they're close, they're going to win a cup. It always seemed like, okay, this is a good team. They play well. They have a lot of good players, but they're not going to make it past the second round at best. So
yep. One day, Sharks will be back. People were predicting like 2030 for the Sharks to go back to the playoffs. I see way earlier than that. I don't know. I'm way optimistic. Yeah, because there was all these like, oh, the rebuild's going terrible. This was before Macklin, right?
Right. Macklin again is the
linchpin, is the turning.
If Macklin is as good as Macklin is supposed to be, if he gets better from this year,
2028 maybe, 2027.
Yeah, 2028 maybe. Yeah, it won't be next year. I mean, I'm thinking if Macklin is who he's supposed to be. I think Will, as good as Will was in the second half, I think that there's still a little bit of, okay, we still need to see like more of like I think Will definitely got a lot of grace from the coaching staff this year for his mistakes, right? Like I said, it's no knock on Will. He's 19 going on 20. Like he's not a winning player yet, right? He doesn't think the game in kind of the defensive way too that Macklin quite does yet too, I think. And so he's got to get there. He should, but I've got to see it, right? And so we saw the offensive promise this year, and I think next year I want to see a little more of a winning player, the pieces or the sort of the foundation of a winning player from Will, which I did see from Macklin this year. So assuming all that's on an upward curve. Anyway, I know long answer to your question, but yeah, maybe 20. I guess I can see 2027 even if they can just figure out that this defensive part somehow. Well, whether it's they just need a good enough defense, and if Askarov is what he is supposed to be, and if Macklin is what he is supposed to be, and if Will is a good kind of sidekick guy, maybe not quite Patrick Kane level, but like Clayton Keller or
Yeah, or like
a little better than that,
or like a Jeff Carter level, maybe.
Yeah, different kind of player, but yeah, maybe like that. But just basically a guy that is a 80, 90 point guy, which he will
Yeah,
does have the potential to be for sure. And he can do that very quickly as soon as next year or 2 years from now, which is very possible.
sure.
Because Will, you can see that the brain is there. It's just a
Yeah,
matter of stronger, faster if he can do that. And
and
sometimes it
keep up
doesn't
with it.
happen with guys. Guys work out and just doesn't quite happen, right? But you assume that will because usually players don't plateau at this age. It does
Yeah.
happen sometimes, but not usually. And so yeah, so I can actually see sooner. Yeah, because when we talked about this last year,
Mm-hmm.
we were talking without a number one goalie of the future. We were talking without a number one center of the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the defense was just as much of a mess as it still is now in terms of just like the unpredictability of the defense, right? So that's still very much there because most of the Sharks' future on defense is still in prospects. It's not in guys that have arrived yet or close to arriving. So, but because of Macklin and Will and Askarov, I can see sooner than for sure 2030. Yeah. So
All optimistic here on the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I think we've rambled enough about Mike Grier's availability.
yeah.
We'll have a couple, like we'll have what 2 more weeks till the draft lottery. That's our next big date,
Yeah,
but we'll have
draft
some.
lottery is the May 5th or 6th.
Yeah,
We should do another mailbag soon. We did one after the draft lottery last year. I don't know about this year, but the draft lottery was such a big deal last year, obviously getting the number one
yeah.
pick. But yeah,
We'll be back
yeah,
next
we'll
week
have
with
one this year.
Calder Cup stuff and Barracuda
Mhm.
stuff, and
Yeah.
who knows what else will happen with the Sharks? Even though it seems like they've kind of closed the book on this season right now, and we have a bunch of Stanley Cup playoffs to watch. So be
Mhm.
happy, hockey fans. Go watch some playoff hockey. All right. Anything else, Sheng?
Nope.
Sounds good. I hope you all have a good week. We'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.